All right, here we go. Law of detachment, law of syllogism, sorry, is a lot like, you remember the transitive property? If A then B and B then C, then A equals C, right? It's the same thing. It's just using logic, okay? So what they're saying is if P is true and Q is true, so if P is true, right, and Q is true, right, then if P then Q is true. Okay? That's what the law of detachment is saying. Okay? If P then Q is true, and if Q then R is true, then P then R is true. So it's a way of relating back to the logic. So before we would say transitive property, when you're talking about logic or conditional statements, you're going to use law of detachment and law of syllogism. Okay? A biconditional statement, okay, is when we have if P then Q is true, and if Q then P is true, then that means it goes both ways. It's biconditional. And that's what this arrow is referring to. Okay? So that's basically 2.3 and 2.4. So let's take a look at the 2.3 homework, which is 9 through 12. It's not a lot. I guess we could go through 14. Okay. So let's do the odds. 9 through 13. Okay. And this is 2.3. Right? And let's talk about number 9. Number 9 says the sum of the angles measured in a triangle is 180 degrees. So the sum of the measure of the angles is equal to 180 degrees. Okay? And two angles of a triangle's measure is 40 and 60. So then you have angle A, or let's call it 1, is equal to 40, and angle 2 is equal to 60, right? Candy concludes that the third angle measure must be 80. Okay, is this true? Okay, so in other words, we could write this as a statement. Okay, let's start with the first one. If the triangle then 180, right? Let's go with purple. Sorry. If 40 and 60, then 80. So let's think about that. What is 40 and 60? 100, right? So what's 40, 60, and 80? 180. Is that true? So do those add up to be 180? Yeah. So this is a true statement. That's it. That's what I'm looking for right there. Okay? So that's number 9. Okay? First you break it down. What is it saying? What's it telling you? Okay? This is number 9. Okay? What is it telling you? And then you break it down into 2 conditional statements, and you see if it's true. Does a law of syllogism work here? So is it true that there's 180 degrees in a triangle? Yes, right? And obviously we have to take their word for it that the angles are 60 and 40, right? And if the angles were 60 and 40, then the other angle would have to be 80 to make it 180, right? So then that makes it all true. And that's what we're doing. Okay? So let's move on to number 11. Okay, number 11. That's 2.4. Determine if the conjecture is valid by the law of detachment. Given if integer is odd, if one integer is odd and another integer is even, their product is even. So, what they're saying is, for number 11, is if even plus odd, then it equals even. Is that true? Can you get an even and an odd number to equal 24? And then it says the product of 2 integers is 24. Okay? So it's saying that E plus O equals 24. And you're like, well, how is that possible? Two evens always make an even, right? 2 odds always make an even. But an odd and an even always makes an odd. Correct? Because if I take 1 plus 4, I get a 5. If I get 2 plus 7, I'll get 9. So an even and an odd always makes an odd. So this is not correct. See what I mean? This is false. So the law of detachment says this is not true. This is not true. This cannot be true. That an even plus an odd equals, because this is false, this has to be false. Okay? All right, and so, oops, wrong one again. All right, so now we'll go to 13. Are you getting a little bit of a feel for this? A little bit. Okay. All right, so number 13. And then we'll stop it and move the... Well, we might be able to do 2.4 in this also, but I think I'll stop it and then do 2.4. All right, so 2.3, number 13. Draw a conclusion from the given information. Given, if Dakota watches the news, she is informed about current events. If Dakota knows about current events, then she gets better grades in school in social studies. So, what do you think? So, let's kind of put that out. If Dakota watches the news, she is informed about current events. So this kind of relates to Miss Hildebrand's room, right? If Dakota watches the news, right, then she's up on the current events. Okay? Because what you're doing right now in Miss Hildebrand's is watching current events, right? And you're being tested on that. So if you actually watch the current events, then don't you think you'd do better on the testing? Does that make sense? And then it says, if Dakota knows about those current events, right? So if she knows about the current events, then she'll get better grades, right? She'll get better grades. And the conclusion is, therefore, if Dakota watches those current events, she'll get better grades. That's the conclusion. Does this make sense? And then why does that make sense? What are we using? So if Dakota watches the news, she'll learn about the events. If she learns about the events, she'll get better grades. If Dakota watches the news, she'll get better grades. What are we using here?
The law of syllogism.
Yes, law of syllogism. Okay? So, yeah. So that's the law of syllogism. Okay? It's a lot like the transitive property. Remember? If A, then B. If B, then C. Then A equals C. Right? Alright, so the answer is Dakota will get better grades. Okay? Alright. So I want you to do the evens tonight on that.